NPA boss will be inheriting, along with depleted reserves and corrupt employees. National Director of Public Prosecutions, Advocate Shamila Batohi, has an almost impossible job on her hands. It's been described as diving into a shark tank and climbing an Everest of corruption. Does she have what it takes and an organisation that backs her? Now, we discussed the NPA with retired Constitutional Court Judge Johan Kriegler, specialist journalist Karen Morn, and in our Pretoria studio, Kabela Siabi from the Black Lawyers Association. Very warm welcome to all of you. Justice Kriegler, why on earth would anyone want to take this job?
I think it's an enormous honour that's been afforded to the lady. I think she knows exactly what she's let herself in for. She's experienced, she's been there. I think she's dedicated. And to those who pray, I suggest they pray for her. She's going to need all of our support.
That others haven't?
That I don't know. She's got experience. She's been there. She's an experienced prosecutor. She has had exposure not only in this country, she had exposure in the international sphere at The Hague. She obviously impressed the selection committee. I think she has got what it takes. Let's give her every support.
I mean, Karen, you heard the allegations again coming out today about what she's inheriting, who she's inheriting. How's she going to be able to work within that ambit?
Well, to her advantage, all this stuff is coming out. Nothing is in secret. So the South African public is well aware of the state of the NPA. What we've sort of discussed in, hushed tones, rumour and speculation is now being completely put on the table. And that's why these inquiries, whether it's the state capture inquiry or the NPA inquiry, are so important. These were all matters of public record or some speculation and conjecture, but we're getting a very whole-scale picture of where the NPA is. And there's realistic expectations. When we as a public accept that she's walking into an incredibly difficult situation, I think there's an environment of understanding created that no one is expecting miracles here.
Do you think the South African public, has been too forgiving, though? Because, I mean, everyone wants to see people end up in jail. Do you think that it's time that we stop being that forgiving and say, OK, do your job, get them in jail and do it now?
One of the things that really impressed me with Shamila Batohi's interview for the NDPP position was she was very much a rhetoric of let's work together. Let's get the Financial Intelligence Centre involved. Let's get the Auditor General involved. Let's work with Treasury. Let's get, really sophisticated forensic financial people in so we can build sustainable cases in the sphere of corruption. She's a very smart woman, but she's also smart enough to reach out. For instance, we know that, for instance, HSF has been approached by the NPA in terms of working on the Eskom case. Those kind of matters. This kind of, pushing forward of let's work together, let's use the different skills that are available to us, and let's build cases that can result in convictions. And I think that's one of the most impressive things that she brings to the table. Also, she suggested she wants a kind of unit, an aspect of the prosecuting authority to have an investigative capacity, and that is very much like the disbanded Scorpions. And I think if that happens, that will really be a step in the right direction.
Okay, that's important, isn't it, Mr. Sabi, she takes a holistic approach. If you consider how many relationships with the Hawks, etc., all those that Karen's mentioned, have been broken because of past inadequacies and wrongdoing in the NPA.
I think the immediate task that she faces would be to instill a new culture in the NPA. Most of the work in the NPA, by the way, is done in your local magistrates' courts, and it is very few cases that get high-profile attention. But for the system to work, you need to overhaul the whole institution so that from the lowest prosecutor to the highest prosecutor in the structure, everybody plays according to the same script and everybody makes sure that the prosecution function is performed as it should be.
Now, you make a good point there, because you forget with the NPA, you think it's just people at the top, but it actually affects all of us, doesn't it?
There are hundreds and hundreds of good people in the NPA. Let's not forget that.
Let's listen to what Advocate Willie Hofmeyr had to say about the political influence in the investigation of the former police commissioner, Jackie Selebi. He says the Crime Intelligence Unit hampered the investigation. He claims Selebi's case caused problems at the NPA.
The Selebi investigation sort of precipitated a major crisis in the NPA, I think, as everybody is aware, and led to the removal of, or the suspension and then removal of Fusi Pikoli as NDPP. So there was a significant amount of political interference. We were particularly obstructed by people in crime intelligence, but also some of the other intelligence agencies. And I think the sort of broader concern that we developed at the time is that people in the NPA were collaborating with those outside the NPA to try and ensure that the prosecution didn't happen.
Just quickly, comments about that?
No, of course it's true.
Yeah.
Many of us have known that for a long time. It's magnificent that it's out in the open now, and I think that's one of the great strengths of the NPA now under its new NDPP. We all know where the ugly things are. We all know where the skeletons are in the cupboard, and there's a very strong political will backing a clean-up from top to bottom in the NPA and in the whole criminal justice system.
So when you hear things like that, I mean, will it give her the ammunition?
Oh, certainly. That's the point. We no longer have the obfuscation and the secrecy that was characteristic of several of the senior people in the NPA.
And we have a perfect illustration of this in the evidence that came out in the state capture inquiry, that certain individuals within the NPA, Nonkobo Jiba, Lawrence Mkhwebi, and Jackie Lepinka, who was actually the PA to successive heads of the NPA, were allegedly paid money, vast sums of money, by Bosasa in order to provide very classified information that should never have been available to them about the investigation. And a case that was handed to them, an SIU report that was handed to them, which said specific individuals are, could be, could and should be prosecuted for corruption. Since 2010, nothing has happened with that case. And while those individuals may defend themselves, there are big questions about, well, what then happened? How did people get access to this documentation? How would someone like Dudu Mieni, for instance, off the evidence of Angelo Agrizi, have got access to that information? So, while we're hearing that kind of testimony from Willie Hofmeyr, it's also being counterposed with what we're hearing at the state capture inquiry, that there was a deliberate strategy which has been expounded by a number of other academics about capturing state institutions meant to hold government accountable.
And Mr. Sabi, this is to you. I mean, we hear all of this coming out of these commissions. Doesn't it just give people time to destroy evidence? Hasn't that been one of the problems that's led to the backlog that we have seen?
Look, for the NPA to function optimally, it requires the cooperation of other arms of state. You need your police to be able to investigate the crimes. They must compile dockets and present them to the NPA. So unless you have that holistic joining of hands from all the actors who are participating within that sphere, it is not going to happen that she would, as a loner, be able to take the process forward. For the criminal justice system to work effectively, there needs to be also transformation and renewal in other sectors of or in other areas of participation by other players as well. So what is transpiring now, clearly it's matters that would need to be investigated properly by the police and for the police to get the evidence for there to be successful prosecutions of those matters.
I mean, Bosasa, obviously in the news again today, and I mean, you just look at the staggering numbers that are still out there, the millions that they are getting through these government correctional services contracts, and the allegations today that the NPA was involved in suppressing investigations into this. I mean, so you've got to disseminate that chain of command, don't you?
Certainly, and I do believe that Ms. Bathohi is going to have the assistance, should have the assistance of people at the second level of a wide variety of expertise. It's available. I'm sure that the legal profession will give her every support, and I do believe that we can look forward to a couple of months of exciting work at the NPA.
Leading to prima facie cases, and I guess also looking back at cases that need to be resuscitated.
Well, interestingly enough, you know, the other guys were talking about the fact, you know, that there needs to be cooperation from the police. Look at the Richard Mdluli matter. You know, he was accused of kind of corruption linked to a crime intelligence slush fund. That case has lain dormant for many, many years because the police are allegedly unwilling to declassify very important documents. So he is absolutely correct. There needs to be cooperation. But also very, very important, what we've seen again and again with the state capture inquiry is that they have done everything in their power to secure evidence, to provide corroboration. You know, we saw it when they obtained those crucial Gupta leak emails, which we knew the Hawks actually didn't have the original copies of in their possession. They were acting off media reports. The commission secured the original hard drives. They established a chain of evidence so there could be no issue around admissibility, and they got those things into evidence. They were then they could be made available to, for instance, the Hawks. We've seen them again and again with the evidence of a Greasy and those that have come asking about what did you see in the house? What, you know, they always, who did you speak to? The PA. We know that they're gathering telephone records, bank statements, that they are doing everything that they can to literally put the NPA and those in positions of law enforcement in a position to build cases here. And I think the inquiry in what they've done have actually created a real possibility of prosecutions in these cases.
And Siyabi, if you think of what she has to do, she's got to clean up the NPA, she's got to pull it up again, she's got to find money next. I mean, what do you think her priorities should be from a case point of view?
Look, when she steps into the office tomorrow, you must remember that the cold face of prosecutions is with the directors of public prosecutions at the various high court areas. Those people are still in place. Your directors of public prosecutions and the special directors of public prosecutions are the people who take the decisions whether to institute a prosecution or not. And the immediate task would be to get those people on board in line with her mandate of making sure that everybody who has transgressed the law is prosecuted and is prosecuted to the best standard that the NPA can deliver on.
And do you think politics will
That's
let her...
what she should immediately be doing.
The politics will let her do her job? I mean, we've got the Zumas, the Stina, the Guptas. I mean, are we going to see some movement there, and what sort of time frame?
I would like to see the politician visibly obstructing what Ms. Bathohi is doing.
Is she that much of a toughie?
No, but I think the public opinion is so alert at the moment and so enthusiastic for this effort to succeed and succeed visibly and quickly.
We are a nation desperate for accountability, and that's the truth of it. People have seen over and over again, you know, we are the most unequal country in the world, allegedly, you know, according to a number of reports. We have people who are suffering in extreme levels of poverty in this country. And then we have certain individuals who are meant to safeguard the constitutional mandate to act in the best interests of the public, who are not doing so, who are benefiting on the evidence that we've heard in the state capture inquiry to huge amounts of money, all kinds of gifts. And South Africans, I think law-abiding South Africans are just exhausted. They have this corruption fatigue. So the only way to push back against that is to actually demonstrably show there will be accountability, there will be a reckoning, and the tide of this sort of corruption drive that is eaten into the heart of the nation like a cancer, we have some shot at getting better from this. And I think that is the awareness that she has, and I think that's the awareness that, you know, the government of South Africa and President Cyril Ramaphosa in particular is aware of.
Well, let's leave it on that positive note. Thank you, all three of you, Karen Morn, Johan Krichler and Kabela Siabi.